Okay, I'm gonna get cozy here because we're gonna be sitting for a bit. Hi guys, welcome back. I decided, if you've seen my last few vlogs, I've talked about kind of the job search journey and just the whirlwind that is the job market, specifically the tech job market. And I wanted to kind of sit down and go through everything that I have learned from job searching for the last few months. I mostly want it to be helpful if you're kind of going through the same thing and want some kind of like advice and see how I've kind of gone through it. But then I also wanted to make this video to kind of close the chapter on this part of my life. I wrote down some notes because I want to be structured and make sure I hit all of the points. I think this would be really helpful if like you're currently looking for a job, just finished grad school, or I don't know, you're trying to pivot into a different career. I think these were all things that kind of apply to me. So hopefully this is helpful for you. Okay, before I get started, I do want to share a little bit of background. If you're new here, my name is Kara. Welcome to the channel. I recently graduated from business school last year. Oh, it's not so recent anymore, right? To get my MBA from Wharton. And before that, I worked in tech, focused on data science and analytics for basically my entire career before going into business school. And so the reason why I went to business school is because needed a break. And B, I also wanted to kind of pair that technical skill set with something that was more, you know, strategy driven and get like a sense of all parts of a business versus just like the data analytics and data science part, which I think for my long-term goals, which are entrepreneurship, I think that's very helpful. Kind of like view a company from all sides. When I finished business school, I wanted to kind of like explore the entrepreneurial side, but then after a while, I realized like, you know, I need the stability of a job and I wanted that job to be specific. I wanted it to align me with an industry or a skill set that I wanted to bring into entrepreneurship. So that would be, if you're familiar with with the tech field, that would be like product management, strategy, corporate strategy, customer strategy, customer acquisition, just things like that, that I think are very good things to know if you're trying to like create your own business and not just like a small business, but eventually scale it into something bigger. Here are just some of the things that I learned from job searching in this very crazy market. And the first thing is it will be an emotional roller coaster. I feel like if you're watching this, you probably already feel that way. You'll have moments where you start off optimistic, then you might be discouraged for a bit, and then you'll be optimistic again, and it kind of just goes through those ebbs and flows. And part of that is applying to jobs, not hearing back, or applying to jobs, interviewing, getting ghosted. I feel like that happened more times than I expected. I'm talking later stages. Like I remember having a final round and, you know, sending out my thank yous and being told I'd hear back in a couple of weeks. And to be honest, there's kind of a rule of thumb in terms of when you should hear back from a company, but after a while, it was like not even a rejection. Like, did you guys forget, or like, are you just stringing me along? So I had to like reach out to them, and they were like, oh yeah, we forgot to like follow up with you. And so you'll have to know that that is probably going to happen. And so all I can say is during that time, you have to just find a way to stay sane. And I will say I struggled really hard with this because I had this like realization that I was essentially working like 3 jobs. Just like going through the job process is like a full-time job. When you think about the applications, the emails, the interviews, the prep for the interviews, the projects, all of that, that's like a full-time job. And then on top of that, I was working on Data Influencer and the Beauty Stack, which are like my two side projects. And then on top of that, I was also doing freelancing and like coaching on the side. And so at one point I had no time for anything, and it was driving me crazy. I struggled in the beginning, I'll be honest, but I will say what helped was working out. Like I made exercise. There's a moment when I kind of like fell off when I was just like so overwhelmed with everything, but I try to emphasize and prioritize my daily workouts because that could be just like one small win, one small thing I did for myself, and it would kind of reset my day. But then I would, go on walks, touch grass, be in nature. Sometimes see my family, grab dinner with your friends. If your friends aren't around, FaceTime them. Just, I think some sort of normalcy, but I can also understand how that can be hard as this process goes on, because after a while, it's just I don't want to get on the phone and talk about the job hunt again. I'm exhausted. That's the one thing I don't want to talk about, but that's also the elephant in the room. No, I would just say, figure out how you're going to kind of ride that roller coaster. If it means focusing on your physical health, your mental health, your friendships, making sure that I really don't know. You have to, everyone's going to be different. For me, it was my physical health was tied to my mental health. So I think the one thing that just did not falter was my working out. And I will say another thing that I got out of this process is understanding what actually matters in this job market, this current job market. Number one, tailor your resume. I heard people say that they tailor the resume for each company. I think that's absurd. Maybe I would have gotten a job earlier if I did. Who knows? Know what types of roles you're applying for. Bucket them into 1, 2, 3 categories, no more than 3. Otherwise, I think you're spreading yourself a little thin. Then have a resume that caters to each bucket. So for me, I was applying to product development, product strategy, corporate strategy roles, and then I was applying to data roles. So those 2 resumes were somewhat different. You might just need one because you're only applying to one type of role. And on top of that, quantify. One thing that I did not do well was take notes before I left Instagram on quantifying the impact. So I had to kind of estimate, which is never as good as having those actual numbers. So if you're still at your job and you can remember it's fresh on your brain, quantify the percent change in customers you contributed to, or blah, blah, blah. Just have numbers and metrics that you can point to. Another thing I have lots of thoughts on is cold calling or cold emailing versus referrals. For a long time, people were that's the only way to get jobs. The last couple of offers that I've gotten before this current experience came through referrals. And so, yes, I understand that referrals are important, but I also think that referrals have gone to a point where everyone's just kind of giving them out because everyone wants to go into certain industries and certain roles that I feel they don't hold as much weight anymore. I was reaching out to friends and alumni for referrals and was getting some traction, but to be honest, the furthest I got in roles were from roles that I cold applied, did not have any connection referring me to. So I don't know if one is better. Maybe I could have been getting more referrals, who knows? But in terms of cold emailing, I'm kind of iffy on that. I spent the beginning of my process emailing and reaching out to alumni who were kind of doing things that I was thinking about, or were in fields or in companies that I was thinking about applying to. And at the end of each call, they always offered to refer me, which was always nice. But I don't think that went as far because at the end of the day, it's different from, an alum at a smaller company versus I was looking at alums at bigger companies. So I don't think it wasn't worth it because I did reach out and now I have these alumni connections that I can follow up with and have those mentorship relationships. I would say try and then see what works in your industry and your specific role, because maybe if I had a different background, the alumni reach outs would have proved to be more fruitful. One thing that was kind of heartbreaking to learn during this process is what hiring managers want. I mean, you already know what they want. It's in the job description. But I will say one thing I learned was they want someone who can do 100% of that role as is. And before everyone's well, of course, it's in the job description. I feel it trips people up because you also want to show that you want to grow in the role and grow in the company. They want that growth to come from where the company might be going in the next 5, 6, 10 years. And the reason why I say that was kind of heartbreaking to figure out is because there was a time when you didn't have to check all of the boxes on the job description. There's research that shows that men tend to apply to jobs that they don't check all of the boxes on. They get hired because they can show that they're willing to learn, or they can figure it out and grow within that role. And the research also shows that women wait until they can check all of the boxes before they apply. And I remember learning about this research maybe when I was in college, because I know that if I meet like half or most, good enough. I feel like there was a time when people were willing to go for someone who didn't like tick all of the boxes, because it's really hard, because each company is so specific. People would try and think of like what skills are transferable to my company and to this role that I'm hiring for. I feel like that doesn't really apply as much anymore. And you know, it is sad, but I also realize that it is the reality. You have to be willing to accept that that's the case and apply to jobs that you can honestly do in your sleep. And then maybe the excitement and the growth comes from maybe where the company is going and how you can help shape it. I would say those were like the two big ones, but then I had a few other lessons that I learned. I'm gonna do some quick fire ones. One, take breaks if you can. I would go sometimes a week or two without doing anything job related, and I felt like I was hindering the process. But I also realized that if I hadn't taken those breaks, I would have just been so burnt out, because I don't know about you guys, but there was a moment where I just felt like so much of my brain power is going into applying for jobs, and that's not a fun place to be, right? Like when you like a challenge, when you like to do interesting work, applying to jobs is not interesting. It's a challenge, but it's a different type of challenge, you know? And so taking those breaks was really helpful. Also, it helped with the second thing, which is your mindset is so important. And whatever you can do to kind of like protect how you show up is the most important thing, because there were times when I had to just snap out of it. Like I was so exhausted, but you don't want to show up to an interview exhausted. You don't want to interact with people that could be your potential coworkers in a way that's just not true to who you are outside of this situation that is job hunting. And that goes back into just finding a way to like ride this emotional roller coaster, whether it's working out. There were moments when I was just like, you know what, my interview is tomorrow. Instead of me sitting here and like cramming and trying to make sure I know everything about where the company and their competitors are going, I can just trust the fact that I can speak to it. But I'm gonna go out to dinner tonight and have like a good time, and then sleep early, wake up and feel refreshed for the interview. And I think that went a long way for me. Another one is rejection. Actually, one of my friends texted this to me. Rejection is redirection. One thing about me, I brushed off those rejections like, what was it, Teflon? Pew, pew. I wouldn't recommend just taking the rejection and being like, obviously I'm perfect, that means nothing. What I would recommend is getting some sort of feedback where the feedback was, it was literally between you and someone who has, I don't know, years of experience in this role. And then the only thing I can do from there is like apply to roles where I have that experience, where I'm now the person who has this amount of experience paired against someone who doesn't have that kind of experience. After all, you're just like, oh, it's your loss. I would also recommend being clear on what you're trying to get. And even though that might change as you kind of go through the process, because for me it changed, I went in being like, I'm going to apply to product management roles because that's a natural kind of trajectory given my background in data science and analytics and then my business school experience, not realizing that now in this current tech world, people aren't hiring people externally who don't have the product management experience. It's one thing if you're already in the company and you're already working with these types of teams, but it just after a while, it's just like I'm knocking on a door that might open at some point, and a couple of times it did, but at the end of the day, it was just a time and effort thing. I would say my North Star was never really product manager. It was always something that would grant me some stability, but also help me get some sort of skill set that I can take on when I eventually start my own business. And for me, I always thought, oh, product management, because like if I want to create my own tech company, it's helpful to, have been working with all of those different teams. But then I also realized like I could be working on a team that focuses on customers, understanding users, understanding the strategy behind like expansion. So I just made sure my broader goal was something that could apply to different types of roles. But for you, it might be industry experience, connections that you might want to get out of a role. It might just be money, that financial stability. There are a few things I would do differently. The first thing I would do is I would do less. Like I said, at one point I felt like I was working 3 or 4 full-time jobs without the pay of 3 or 4 full-time jobs. And it was a lot. And I think that contributed to me at times just like feeling so burnt out, to be honest, and needing so many like breaks from it, because the other stuff I think didn't help as much with the job search, but it did help with, I guess, a sense of purpose and something outside of the job search. So, but I would just do less, maybe 1 or 2 fewer projects, you know. The other thing I would have done differently is I wish I had recorded more of the process. Like, you guys have been seeing some of the process towards the end, but I wish I had recorded more of those moments without the goal of like posting it on YouTube, just having it in my own like personal archive or vault, because I think it's something that, I don't know, maybe in a few years I'd want to look back on and see how I kind of like navigated and how my views on work and entrepreneurship and certain skills have changed over the last few months. If you're still here, thank you for coming with me on that kind of trip down memory lane with my learnings. I hope this has been really helpful, and I will say it's so normal to feel stuck during this kind of process. It's not a fun process. I mean, the end is fun. It's normal to kind of feel stuck or overwhelmed with this process, and I would just say find a way to get a little bit more joy outside of the job search process. But I hope this has been helpful, and if you're currently in the job search process, please comment below your biggest learning so far. I feel like the reflection is good, and it also can help someone else who's watching the video. And with that, make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed and join the family. Okay, bye.